How are you doing, YouTube? Matt Massive Beer Reviews. Back a little treehouse up in this piece in the form of their quadruple shot. Yeah, this is a 11.2% Imperial Stout with coffee, mind you. Comes courtesy of my boy Steven. And yeah, let's just dive into it. This is for this batch of quadruple shot. Treehouse Coffee Team crafted a custom dark roast coffee. Utilized aggressively, it resulted in the most intense and delicious coffee stout we have made to date. It is outrageous. Very modest, Treehouse. Yeah, Steven sent this off. I love me the shots. So that's motor oil right there. Jesus Christ. But they've let me down here and there as of late. The old shots, the single shots, double shots, whatnot. I mean, double shot is one of my favorite OG coffee stouts of all time. I believe there's one floating around up there. At least there was at one point. Maybe I push it to the back because they've disappointed me. But we're talking about quadruple shot. Label-wise. Silver on black, not as good as gold on black, but what do you want? But that beer almost looks exactly like this jacket. A little bit of gold tinge to it. Malt ball colored head. Rich darkness. Nose. It's definitely coffee beer. I mean, that's no mistaking it, but I've got much, much bolder, bigger coffee off of beers before, even in the single and double shots of the world. It smells smaller. It does. It doesn't have a big sweetness to it, which I actually appreciate. But the way the coffee comes off is not as roasty, toasty, big, and bold as the label leads you to believe. Now, that could definitely change the taste, but it smells like a really well done 7% coffee stout. I don't mean that in a negative way, in any stretch of the imagination. But it's not like some extra double, quadruple, crazy coffee thing on the nose. At least on the nose. It gets totally changed the taste, but it smells nice. The one thing I probably appreciate about this over a hefty portion of Treehouse Stouts is I'm not getting an overt kind of lactose. A lot of their stouts tend to come off very, very much like milk stouty for me. You seem to be leaning a little bit away from that as of late, and I really appreciate that. So I think I'm gonna get a nice kind of balance between sweetness and bittering. Hopefully that coffee shows up in spades. Let's dive in. Cheers. That's really good. I mean, I'm not going to sit here and like pull punches. That is really, really tasty. But, I'm going to get on that fucking annoying fucking soapbox of mine. I've had this beer from them with this level of impact and probably a bolder coffee presence at a much, much lower ABV. It's a really well done stout. It's got a nice sweetness level to it. It's not sweet. I'm not going to sit here and talk about this beer being dry or not sweet, but it's an appropriate level sweetness for its ABV level. But when you start to get into the kind of beer portion of the show, which is definitely there, and the coffee portion of the show, which is probably a little bit smaller than what I expect for a quadruple shot and its ABV level, leaves me a little bit wanting, to be honest with you. Nice roasted malts. That's probably bigger than the coffee here. The coffee comes off as a very light roast for me. When you're talking about 11% beer, as big as this one is, and as, impactful from a purely beer standpoint. Again, it drinks more like a 9% beer than 11, but the coffee comes more like a 6% beer level coffee impact as opposed to a even 9 to 11% beer. It seems a little bit out of whack when it comes to the way the coffee kind of showing itself. I want something hair on fire here. You're talking about 11+%. You're talking about quadruple shot. You're talking about having this kind of just big, bold, rich, roasty, toasty kind of coffee and roasted malt, kind of big, huge, kind of just monstrosity of coffeeness. And it's just lacking that. Now, you could sit there and say on the opposite end of the spectrum, I'm lacking the palate to taste the nuance and richness. And that's almost a valid point because, you know, a lot of times these kind of super boutique-y kind of very fancified artisanal coffees, and I'm not talking coffee stouts, I'm talking actual coffees, you know, they kind of miss for me a little bit here and there. They lack a boldness, a richness, a darkness that I really hang my hat on when it comes to coffee. So it could be more me and my palate, and then I'm looking for hair on fire when it comes to coffee, as opposed to subtle, soft nuances of fruits and beans and greenness and peppers and all those kind of things that a lot of people pull out of coffee. But it's quadruple shot. You know what I mean? Like, give me a single shot. You know what I mean? Like, if maybe I'm reading it wrong in my brain. Maybe I'm dissecting the meaning of the beer wrong in my brain. But when I say here quadruple shot, I think of a quadruple shot of espresso. That's kind of how my brain processes the name of the beer and what that means to me, and what that processes my brain as is the aggressive of aggressive. Like, singles, a coffee. Doubles, a bigger coffee. Triple is heftier stuff, and in quadruples is going to be like, you know, bigger stuff. Maybe it's the Belgian beer fan in me that thinks that way. So I want hair on fire. I want a bit more aggressiveness, not even just from the beer, which I think is a little bit smaller, but big enough to hold up to its own. I want that coffee to be that big. I want it to be big. You know what I mean? I want it to be roasty, toasty, dark roast, in your face, no apologies, unapologetically big, and it just lacks that. And that's where probably my biggest kind of issue with the beer comes. Is not so much that it's a bad beer. It's not by any stretch of the imagination. It's a coffee beer. It's well made. It's tasty. I'm going to drink the whole goddamn bottle. It just lacks that aggressiveness that I really want from this level of coffee beer. Maybe I'm too picky. Maybe, like I said, my palate's just tuned to a uber dark rich coffee. But while this is absolutely delicious beer and is worthy being purchased and drank, it just I want that coffee to be big. I want it to be big. Anyway, let's talk about it. Is this one of the better coffee beers as of late? With that being said, yeah, I still enjoy it. I still enjoy it as a beer and a coffee beer. It's just not even going to get close to Mount Rushmore status for me personally, because I expect the world with quadruple shot. And this one just kind of misses the mark a little bit. You know, still tasty, still drinkable. Just lacks that kind of chutzpah that I want. Value availability, no idea. Steven or anybody else in the Treehouse world, let me know what's what, and leave you with if you like what we like this beer. If you like well done, really well done stouts that are coffee forward, listen, I've had Imperial stouts at this ABV level that show way less coffee than this. So I'm not going to sit here and kind of bitch and moan about it not being a coffee beer. It's a coffee beer. It's just based off of what I remember and memory and what I've had from Treehouse. I remember Double Shot being an infinitely more bigger, bolder version of this at a much lower ABV level and a much more impactful coffee level. So while it's tasty and nice, it wouldn't even be on the Mount Rushmore of coffee stouts from Treehouse alone, I think. So take that for what it's worth. So there you go. Review in the books. Thank you very much, Stephen, for sending this off. Down there if you want to talk about it. Massive Beers if you want to check me out doing the social media stuff. Dear Massif if you want to check me out doing the whole podcasting thing. Hopefully you guys enjoyed the review. Hopefully you're enjoying a little bit of quadruple shot right now. We'll see you next time. Cheers.